Today on the Builder's Edge, we are welcoming someone who has coached thousands of entrepreneurs across hundreds of industries, someone who has helped people escape the 9 to 5 grind and build businesses they love. His work centers around helping people find not just profits, but happiness and fulfillment in their business ventures. Jonah Cascio is the founder of the Employee Escape Plan. He's a mentor, business strategist, and a guide for people ready to take control of their careers, transform their mindset, and actually design businesses that work for them, not the other way around. Over the last 25 plus years, Joe has helped more than 4,000 people launch, grow, and scale businesses with practical frameworks and heartfelt coaching that focuses on joy, freedom, and real results. From helping clients transition out of jobs they hate to teaching entrepreneurs how to build sustainable systems and make meaningful money. Joe brings a unique blend of tactical business insights and human-centered encouragement to everything he does. And we're thrilled to have him here. Joe, welcome to the Builder's Edge.
No more burnout, no more fear. We'll build it strong, make it clear. Not just a grind, but a dream that's true. Building a business that works for you.
Thanks for having me, Deanna. I'm just thrilled to have a chance to share some insights with the world.
Wonderful. I enjoyed our conversation the other day, and you have some great insights. I'm excited for everybody to get into those. So let's talk about your background and your escape plan. Tell us where your journey started, how you went from working in a traditional world yourself to creating this employee escape plan.
Sure. I have an electrical engineering background. I worked in corporate America. I've also left corporate America, made $1 million in my own business and lost everything in a pretty painful and humiliating way.
Oh, wow.
And after that, I did have the blessing of having a mentor, a guy named Jay Abraham, who is a true marketing genius. And I got to spend around 10 years around him. And I went to a paid event. It was life-changing. And after that, his office called and said, "You want to come to the next event?" I said, "I'd love to, but I'm still trying to pay for the first event." This is back in the 80s. And they said, "Yeah, that's great. Can you barter?" I'm like, "Barter? What could I do?" They said, "We need transcription." So they sent me boxes of audio recordings of his marketing think tanks around different aspects of marketing, and they were sorted by 30 topics. So I listened and transcribed manually, and then I listened again and typed it up, and all of my transcriptions ended up in the J. Abraham Marketing Encyclopedia. So I was really gaining this very rich understanding, encyclopedic and understanding of marketing. And in
Wow.
1999, I made a decision that I am no longer a technology guy. I'm a full-time marketing and business consultant, business strategist. And that's what I've been doing since 1999. At that time, most of the people I worked with were already in business. They were making 1 to 3 to 5 to 700,000 a year, and they want to go to that first 1 or 3 or 5 million. Over the years, I kept running into people that said, "I don't make that kind of money. As a matter of fact, I have a job and it sucks, and I wish somebody would teach me to be an entrepreneur." And I ran into that more than once, and I started to realize that every day there are millions of people driving reluctantly to a job they don't want to go to, and they're praying for a mentor to teach them how to start their own business. And so out of that came employee escape plans. So I transform employees into entrepreneurs so they never have to go back to a soul-sucking job.
That's wonderful. So many entrepreneurs, don't succeed. And I think mainly it's because they don't have a plan, they don't have a structure, and then they give up a little too soon. So it's great to have somebody to coach them through that. Okay, so tell us about this employee escape plan. For someone hearing it for the first time, how would you define that to them and its core outcome?
Yeah, well, this diagram behind me is actually, do what you love, share the love, receive the love. It's probably a little bit hard to read, but I think the number one, I think one of the biggest challenges most business owners I talk to are doing something right. They're getting leads, they're making sales, the business is alive, but a lot of them don't actually know exactly why it's working. One of the reasons people
Oh,
struggle and fail is they never had a mentor. They stumble into the right message or the right timing or the right channel. It's like hitting numbers in a combination lock by accident. I'm very intentional. I am not about accidental entrepreneurship. I'm talking about intentional success. And so when I work with people, we make sure that we choose the right business for you because the biggest reason people fail is they're in a business that's not really in alignment with your core values, what you actually enjoy doing, etc. So we want to be very intentional. Let's choose the right business. And it's so important to nail that piece. After that, we build your branding so that you want to, there is no leader without a tribe. There is no tribe without a leader. The highest paid person's the tribal leader, but we don't follow a person. We follow a cause. What do you stand for? So you want to attract the right people who are in alignment with you and repel the people that are not in alignment with you.
That's
And we
another
also,
important piece. Yes.
yeah, so employee escape plan is a step-by-step process. We figure out what do you love doing and how can we promote that to get your message and your business out to the world so people will raise their hand and show a little interest in working with you. And then, how can we get you closing sales and getting paid so that in the end, you need to deliver the goodies. I met a very wealthy man from South Africa. He was like a land baron. This is like 40 years ago. And I asked him, what's the secret to your success? He said three words, deliver the goodies. And, I think that's what business success is all about is making a promise and keeping a promise and delivering on
Yeah.
that promise. And I
Great.
think that's one of the reasons people fail is they make promises they can't make. They're so eager to get a sale, they'll promise anything and everything. And business doesn't have to be that way. A lot of
Yeah.
people build a business on guesswork or hard work. I'm really a big fan of building a business on framework.
That's a good point. Yeah. And you talked about first about picking the right business. I think I have learned that kind of through this podcast that and I'm speaking to my builder, my contractor there. A lot of times they grow up around that stuff and they grow up around multiple pieces of that. And so, I have found that, with some people that have been on the podcast in the past, that when they actually refined their business and became more specific about, what their business is and choosing that right business. Let's say, for instance, I had a guy on that did flooring. And then he changed his business. And you think about flooring, you're thinking, oh gosh, I got this big, bunch of people that, I can do all these different floorings. But it really caused a lot of problems in his business when he separated that and made that a hardwood floor specialist and he just did hardwood flooring, his business soared. So I think it's really important about picking that right business. And when you think of that as a contractor with a contractor mind, I have a history of construction. When you think about that, you think, yeah, he gave himself probably back probably 5 to 10 hours a week when he's, packing his van with the right tools and the right supplies. He probably, if he's just ordering hardwood flooring and now he's doing, larger quantities of orders, now he's got a better relationship with his supplier. He's getting a better price for his flooring from his provider. So, and then if he's just making quotes, our money is made on our quotes. So if he's just
Yeah.
doing hardwood flooring quotes and he's kind of doing basically the same quote over and over and over again, his quotes get better. So he makes more money threefold, at least those three places that I can think of. Not to mention now he's a specialist. So you're going to get a higher end client who wants a specialist to do, if somebody's thinking, I want hardwood floors, they're thinking, I want a specialist, because hardwood floors are those are pretty grand. So they want somebody who specializes in that. So you're going to get the higher ticket prices. So it really, his business really soared. When we think as a business owner or entrepreneur, funneling down to where I don't have a biggest clientele, when in fact, you're funneling up basically to have a better quality of a business. So picking the right business, you're right, is a big, big piece.
Yeah. Well, and I see it all the time. How many times have we been in a networking group? There's 20 people and everybody's giving their 60-second elevator pitch.
Uh-huh.
And after everybody's given their pitch, two-thirds of the people, it's like I still don't really understand what they do. So,
Absolutely.
so you got to choose your business and then you got to communicate it so that people understand it and understand the value. I think far too often we choose a business based on this is what I love doing, and that certainly is important. But it's not just about me, I love doing, but who am I doing it for and am I benefiting them? Because the purpose of a business is to create a customer. One of the things that's happening now is a lot of people are like, they love AI. I'm in an AI business. And it's like, who's your customer? It's like, well, I don't have any customers yet, and and what problem do you solve for your customers? So, I think far too often we fall in love with our product or service, and we actually need to fall in love with the human beings that we're serving.
True. You talk about building not just business, but you talk about a happiness-centered business. What does that look like in practice, and where do they find that balance?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this diagram behind me, but do what you love, share the love, receive the
Yeah.
love. If I'm going to help somebody leave the job they hate, let's not build a business you hate.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so number one is, let's choose a business that you love. Number two, let's build a brand that's in alignment with what you stand for and what you love doing. If we're going to create an offer to sell something, we want to offer something that you love offering, they love buying, and you love delivering on. In terms of sharing the love, the promotional side, nobody wants to hear another advertisement, but everybody likes a good once upon a time. So we need to tell stories that we actually enjoy telling that invite people into our circle of business.
Oh, that's a
We
good point. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that today. I'm about ready to put an ad out. I'll do that. Okay, good.
we
Thanks.
want to promote in a way that feels good for us. We want to nurture people, and then we want to we don't want to just fill our calendar up with people. If we generate a lead has what's called a buying temperature, like from 1 to 10. One is
Yeah.
I'm mildly, barely interested, and 10 is like I'm ready. Here's my credit card. And
Yes.
so when we're doing lead generation, a lead generation is just getting people to raise their hand. Now they might be only a one or a two or three in terms of buying temperature. Now,
Yes.
one of the mistakes a lot of people do is they generate a lead and then they jump into a sales call. Okay, that's a
Yeah,
mistake. You
it
don't want to,
is.
what you want to do is generate a lead and warm up that lead. We call that lead nurturing.
You're
So,
absolutely right.
so the harder your marketing works, the easier your selling goes. So if you generate a lead, you want to give them videos to watch and articles to read and give people a binge-worthy experience. So they start binging on your content and they start falling in love with you so that their buying temperature becomes 8, 9, or 10. You want to fill your calendar up with eights, nines, or tens.
Y-
I have a funny way of, it's better to kiss a girl who's leaning into you than try to kiss a girl who's leaning away from you. And the same thing's true in your
Yeah,
business. You
that's
don't want to
true.
chase people who are not interested. You want to attract people who are hot and bothered and really
Yeah.
excited about working with you. And
Okay,
so,
so let's talk about that for on a contractor's prospect. The way
sure.
I explain this to a contractor is like, let's say you do an HVAC, you're an HVAC contractor. This is talks about, a maintenance plan. So if you have like a free maintenance plan, or let's say you're a handyman, let's do a home maintenance checklist. These are free things that you can offer. Videos about how you go through your job you can offer, your little YouTube reels about, a day in the life of this contractor or day in the life of a home builder. These are all great things to warm them up. Good ideas from.
Yeah, so the lead generation should be relevant. So, here's a
Yes.
10-point checklist to putting that patio together or whatever. That's certainly part of it. But there's a we want people to know us, like us, trust us. So the
Okay.
first thing is we want, before we connect with people at a business level, we want to connect at a human level.
Okay.
Maybe, you know, oh, we just poured this beautiful concrete slab and the dog just pooped on it. If you had a video of that, that would be actually hilarious. It's
Yeah.
like funny things happening on the job site.
Yeah.
What's going on behind the scenes. I think our marketing doesn't just need to be sales pitch. It also needs to be, wow, Deanna's really cool. I'd like to have a meal with her. I'd like to have a cup of coffee. I'd like to have a beer with her. she seems like a really cool person.
Uh,
So our content, there's like four kinds of content. There's connection content.
yes.
I feel good about you as a human being.
Okay.
There's also proof content. You know, let me show you a video of my happy customer. We just finished their project. Okay, that's
Okay.
proof of success with a client. There's teaching content where you actually give some value and show a little bit of expertise.
Okay.
And then there's also invitation content. Would you like our help? Then, here's how would you like an estimate? Click on here, grab a spot on our calendar. We love to give you an estimate. So we want to give this rounded type of experience so that people know us, they like us, they trust us, they respect us. And what we want to do is build a relationship. Again, binge-worthy content. It's like binging on Netflix. Let's give them a bunch of stuff that they actually enjoy watching so that we can start building a relationship before we even have that first conversation.
That's great. That's great. Google did some research. I did a podcast back about it, and it talks about that messy middle and just getting people in your messy middle and getting them to know you and do those several things that you talk about. That's great. Okay, it's all about mindset, isn't it? Our biggest mindset shift. Now you're going from, especially these people, they're the 9 to 5, you're clocking in for somebody else. Maybe you're doing one job. Most likely they're probably having you do part of their job too. But most likely you've got one task. Now you're going to transition into, the environment of an entrepreneur. Now you're the leading force. What are those mindset shifts?
Well, I think when we have a job, we show up, we have a job description, we do what they're paying us to do, and then at the end of the day, we punch out and go home.
Right.
Maybe, if you're say in the contracting business, maybe, or you're a carpenter, you show up, you do carpentry work at the end of your shift, you go home. But, being in business for yourself, you are not just you know, doing the work. There's three parts to any business: attract, convert, and deliver. And so, if you have a job doing carpentry, you're delivering carpentry services. But when
Right.
you're a business owner, you've also got to be the marketer and the salesperson, and you got to do your taxes and your paperwork and all that other
Yeah.
stuff. So there are more pieces to the puzzle, and also when you're the employee, the responsibility is really on the business owner. When you're the business owner, it's all on you, and so you have to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's, and you're developed in all of those areas of business. So you need to generate leads. You need to communicate your message clearly. You need to, in the case of contracting, you need to go out and do estimates. You need to close the sale. Now that you close the sale, and okay, now you got to schedule it, and you've got to work with your suppliers and your vendors to make sure that you have all the supplies ready to do the
Uh,
work, and then you got to complete the job and make sure the client's happy. And then if you do a good job, you want to ask the client, do you have anything else you need help with? So maybe you get some repeat business. So you got to have that marketer and salesperson hat. You also need to ask for referrals. Do you know anyone else that could use our services? And if you really are savvy in your business, you'll start getting video testimonials. We just finished this job with Deanne. Deanne, could you tell people how you feel about your new room addition we just created for you?
Absolutely. Yes, they do great. People are believing the video testimonials a lot more than they are the other written testimonials for sure.
Employees use resumes. Business owners use marketing materials.
Yes.
Okay, so employees, they usually go out and they try to get a job, and hopefully they hold that job for many years. A business owner is out getting new customers. Every day we're looking for a new customer. Every day, every week we're looking for, where else can we, I have all these people. I have some employees. I got to keep them busy. So I got to
Yeah.
keep new customers coming in the front door as we finish projects out the back door. And so the employee mentality is I'll just get a job and I'll be set for the next several years. Whereas a business owner, One of the things a business owner has to master is the humble brag. We need to be able to say, I
Yeah.
am good at what I do, and you should hire me because I am the best. I've been trained by the best. I only work with the best. I always get paid the best, and I'm worth every penny. And I'm not bragging, I'm applying for a job. Every time, because you're only as good as your last gig. When you have 3 gigs, you finish your 3 gigs, all of a sudden, business is at a dead stop again. And you got to make
Yeah.
sure that you have a constant stream of leads and clients and sales so that you can keep busy and you can keep the cash register ringing because there is no guaranteed paycheck. One of the things that really messes with people that make the transition is I call it income ambiguity. Okay, when you have a job, every Friday that paycheck is there.
Yeah.
When you
You
have a
know what it's
business,
gonna,
you
how
don't,
much too.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you have a business, you don't know when the next person's going to say yes. I'm ready to sign a contract. Here's your deposit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would rather make $30,000 a year, $3,000 a month, than they would make 300,000. I want to know I'm making $3,000 a month and I know my paycheck's going to be there when you could make 300,000 a year, not knowing exactly who's going to say yes and make the next purchase. And
Yeah.
a lot of people cannot handle income ambiguity, but it's actually a form of emotional intelligence to be able to manage your emotions, not only when in the good times, but you need to manage your emotions in the tough times. Because if you start freaking out, I need money, you actually scare money away.
Wow. Wow, that's a good point. Okay. From your perspective, what happens when someone has the right mindset but the wrong systems?
Well, mindset is certainly important, but it's not everything. There's actually 9 drivers in business. You can have a great mindset, but if you don't have systems, you're going to be a little bit chaotic and you're going to be inconsistent. You can have a good mindset, but you also need good marketing.
Yeah.
You can have a good mindset, but you also need to have good strategic relationships. It's not what you know, but who you know. You can have a good mindset, but you also need to have the right business model. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I had a contractor the other day and he specialized, well, he had a lighting business and like a home entertainment electrical type, like he put in these systems, sound systems and home
Home
entertainment
automation.
systems. Yes. And so, but he had no relationship with these big builders. So I was like, man, you need to be the first person they think of when somebody says, I want to add, in my design, I want this sixth bedroom to be, a sixth and seventh bedroom, or I want the theater in my house to be all, wired right and all, done right. They need to instantly think of him because of these relationships he's building. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to many, many years ago before I was doing what I'm doing now, I had this electrical engineering background and I worked with an electronics store and they would sell TV antennas back when we used TV antennas.
That's been a little while. You're telling your age there, Joe.
But they would sell it. They would find somebody that wanted a TV antenna, but they didn't do the installation. So they
Yeah.
would get somebody would say, I want to buy this antenna, and they would send the sale my way. I would close the deal, and then I would install it. So I would make a profit on the antenna, and I would make a profit on the various parts, and then I would also make money on the install. And it was a nice joint venture relationship because you can't sell an antenna to somebody who doesn't know how to install that antenna
Right.
properly. And so it was a nice partnership. And, a lot of people, if you have the right relationships, a lot of people can throw work your way.
It's true. It's true. Okay, so systems very important. A lot of people want freedom, Joe, but they don't want what kind of they don't know what kind of business to start that'll get them there. How do you help them choose that right business?
Well, freedom is an interesting concept. We have the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, and they're talking about doing a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. And you can't have freedom without responsibility, it's they go hand in hand. And freedom,
Yeah,
there's different kinds of freedom. There's time freedom and geographic freedom
true.
and
Financial freedom, all
financial
kind of
freedom,
different freedoms. Yes.
freedom. to set your own calendar and your own schedule.
So actually, I guess the first thing you probably would do is just find out from each client how they define freedom.
Well, again, freedom is an interesting concept. If you want to make money in your sleep, the first step is you got to learn how to make money while you're wide awake. Okay.
Yeah, that probably would be the probably first step.
I had a client, he was a medical doctor in North Carolina, really neat guy. And he read the 4 Hour Work Week. And, it's like, how do I make the 4 Hour Work Week? And the truth is, as a medical doctor, you need to be seeing patients, and
Yeah,
come to find out he actually enjoys serving patients. And, this idea of a 4 Hour Work Week, if you only saw patients for 4 hours during the week, you're not doing much medicine at all.
yeah,
There's ways to leverage your time and stuff, but the problem with the 4 Hour Work Week, it sounds so good. It's a great book on using like virtual assistants and outsourcing.
sure.
But but if your aspiration is to only work 4 hours a week, you're probably not going to make much money. I don't know anybody that's really super successful that only works 4 hours a week unless they've put years building a system and an organization to actually deliver when they're not there. And
True.
if your first step is freedom, if I can help somebody, say I'm working with somebody, they're making $80,000 a year in a job. And if I can help you make 80,000 a year in your own business where you get to actually set your own schedule and instead of saying I'm going to do it, yes sir, no sir, three bags full sir to your boss, instead of doing that, instead of working for the man, you become the man. Stop working for the boss, become the boss.
Right.
And you get to actually build a business on your own terms. To me, that's a success, even if you're making the same money, but you're running your agenda instead of running someone. Are you
Good
building your
point. Yeah.
dream or are you building somebody else's dream? So freedom is I mean, do we really ever have total freedom? I have freedom to, I make good money. I serve my clients, but I also have a lot of open space on my calendar and it's by design. And so, are you running your business by design or are you running it by default? One of the reasons people don't have much time freedom is they never designed it into their system.
Good point.
I think if you really, one of the paradoxes is the busier our business gets, the less lifestyle a lot of people have. And what we want to do is the busier my business get, I also get more time off. For
Yeah.
example, this is January. I just helped a bunch of people set up their preloaded year for 2026. And one of the things we make sure is every other month, put an adventure on the calendar. Go do something fun. If you're just work, work, work all the time, you're working, but you have no lifestyle. So making money without the lifestyle, it's those things are not going to accidentally fall onto your calendar. You need to be
Yeah.
intentional
True.
about you need to take time for classes. You need to take time with your family. You need to take time on your birthday. You need to take time for
Yes.
your friends and you need to so the first thing we do is when we schedule the preloaded years, we put the big rocks. What are your money makers? Let's put those on the calendar. And then
Yeah.
what are your pebbles? What are the things you need to do to support those big rocks when people
Okay.
hire you? And then what's the sand? What's all the stuff in between? But if you put your big money making rocks on your calendar and you put your fun personal things on the calendar, what you end up realizing is there's a lot of white space on your calendar where you do have a lot of open time.
Wow. Cool. Okay. What are some common roadblocks, all changes, big changes in our lives. We always come up on those roadblocks. What are the big ones that you see clients hit and how do you help them break through those?
Well, one of the roadblocks is simply not doing the work. One of the roadblocks is when you ask somebody, what do you do for a living? They're so cryptical. They don't, your messaging isn't clear. That's a roadblock. You don't have generation in place. That's a roadblock. You're generating leads, but you're not closing sales. That's a roadblock. I think for any business, it's so funny on LinkedIn. There's somebody, here's 50 KPIs. You don't need 50 KPIs. You need about three. How many leads are you generating every day? How many clients are you getting every week? What's the lifetime value of a customer? Think of the fourth sales first. If you get a customer, what else do you need? What else do you need? What else do you need? Next thing you know, they're hiring you over and over and over again. So a lot of times we're so focused on getting the new customer that we're not asking the question of what else does the customer need? I had a client, he had a security guard business. He was a security guard at the Los Angeles Convention Center, and he picked up a client securing their yards. This place did like transformers. They were a subcontractor for the electrical company, so they had copper wire, and people were stealing the
Oh
copper
yeah.
wire off of their yards.
Yeah.
So they hired him. They were paying him $3,000 a month to protect this yard.
Yes.
And it was at night, two shifts, him, and then he had one employee. And he's like, he hired me. He's like, Joe, how can I get more customers? And we talked about that. And I said, there's three ways to grow a business: more customers, more frequency, and there's larger transactions. And he's like, I want more customers. And I said, well, okay, that's good. But humor me. Why don't you go to your one customer and ask them, do you have any more work for me? And he
Okay.
did it. He was reluctant. He wanted more customers. He really didn't think to get more from his one customer, but he went back to them and says, do you have any more work for me? They gave him seven more yards at $3,000 per month per yard, and his income went up from 3,000 a month to 24,000 a month. And that was just
Wow.
one lunch he had with me.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, just one simple question, one simple ask. And we think in our mind that people know to ask us. Well, I'm already guarding three of his yards. Like, if he needed me to guard more yards, surely he would ask me. But obviously he didn't.
Yeah, he
That's
was guarding one yard and he just thought that was it. That's all they need. But it's a big company and they had a bunch of yards and yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So, in your experience, what separates a business that survives or just survives from one that truly scales?
simplicity scales, complexity fails. I think one of the things that I see people that stops them from scaling is they overcomplicate their process. They're marketing by brute force, Well, the only way to make money is just to make 300 calls a day, and that's not sustainable. Not everybody is even wired to make 300 calls in a day. And
Yeah.
the problem with that is you're setting up a dynamic of chasing people instead of setting a dynamic where you're being chased by people.
Where you're attracting people to you. Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to chase people, you want to attract people.
Yeah.
What prevents people from scaling? So they either have complicated messaging, they overcomplicate their messaging, they have overcomplicated lead generation. Their lead generation isn't targeted towards even the right people, so they generate a lot of unqualified leads.
Yeah. Yeah, I had someone say today, because we do marketing as well, and, we have this podcast and we do, all types of marketing and all types. We have the Builder's Edge master scaling product. And, it could, scale any business that needs to have all that automation, be seen visibly through AI and all that. But I want to keep it, the builder's edge. I want to structure it specifically for my people. I grew up building homes. That's me. That's who I speak to. These people are going to want somebody in their corner to do this marketing and to do this automation that understands their business and what they're going through and what they need out of their business. So I think that, of course, this type of structure can help any business, any entrepreneur, but I don't want to speak to every entrepreneur. I want to speak to
Everybody
my
is,
peeps.
most people are not my people.
Yeah.
I work really in the big scope of things. I work with a tiny number of people. And I do, I'm a massive contribution to the clients I serve. My aspiration this year is to just impact, my capabilities are amazing. And yet the number of people I'm actually working with is pretty darn small. And I'm grateful that I have this chance to impact that small number of people in a really profound way. One of the
Yes, that's
things that
wonderful.
stops people from scaling is they try and do everything themselves. To
Okay.
start a business, you need to be a little bit of a rugged individualist. In order to do things right, you got to do it yourself. And if it's to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
But you can only grow so far on you, me.
True.
If you really want to scale, your success depends on the support of others. And so you need to delegate to team and humans. You got to delegate to system. You got to
Yeah.
delegate a little bit to automation. And that's usually a roadblock for a lot of people is they build the business around me, instead of building a
Yeah.
true team and an organization. And it's really difficult to scale. If what would happen if your business, increased 10x overnight? What would break first? And usually it's the business owner.
Ooh, ouch. Ouch.
So
Because, that hurts because we think we've got it, all figured out. We think we're doing what's right and all that. But yeah. What is it? 90 some percent of businesses don't even last 2 years. Am I getting that statistic correctly?
those are wonky statistics. I think if you buy a Subway franchise, it'll be around 5 years from now because the formula is solid. So,
Good point.
but a lot of people do struggle and fail. I say 9 out of 10 people fail in business, but not on my watch. You know, success is inevitable if you do everything right. The
That's
challenge is
good.
most people don't know what are the right things to do, and
Absolutely. We don't.
that's
You've got all this noise in here telling you you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should do, I mean, it's a lot of noise. So knowing that and defining that is true.
there's so much bad advice out there too. One of the things that people do is they say, I want to scale my business. I want to scale my lead generation. It's like, okay, well, how much lead generation do you have now? Well, kind of zero. It's like, okay, 100, if we scale your lead generation 100 times zero is still zero. So
Yeah.
scaling, the thing about scaling is it's multiplying something that's already working. So
Okay.
you have to before you scale, you've got to put your foundation in place.
Yes. True. Good point. Okay, so for somebody defining success early on, so we're getting started, we're defining success. Is that in revenue, impact, happiness, or something else?
Well, there's all kinds of metrics of success. If Jim Rohn used to say, if your goal is to go into the mountains and have a cabin and feed the squirrels, and you indeed get a cabin and you're in the mountains and you feed the squirrels, we call that a success. So success is simply hitting your goals. So now, what is a good goal? I think for any business, again, if you're generating leads every day, and clients every week, and you're actually doing work that you enjoy, that's a success. Now, if you're generating leads every day and you're getting clients every week, but you don't enjoy your work, I don't think that's a
That's
success.
true.
You
That's
know,
true.
if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. If you're going to build a business, you might as well enjoy it. And if you're busy, if you're making money doing something that you don't enjoy doing, I don't think that's success. If
Yeah.
you're making money and you never have any time off, I don't think that's success.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
true. That's
you
absolutely
know,
true.
people say I'm a serial entrepreneur and I got 5 businesses. First of all, why do you keep changing your business? When I hear somebody say I'm a serial entrepreneur, what I hear is here's somebody that still hasn't figured out what they want to be when they grow up. When I hear
Yeah.
somebody say I have 5 businesses, it's like, oh, you must be making a lot of money. Very frequently, people have 5 businesses and they're not even making 10K a month. And so
Wow.
it's better to have one business that works that.
Yes.
And would you rather have one $10 million businesses or 10 separate $1 million businesses?
Oh, I'd
To
rather have
me,
one successful.
yeah, one,
It's too
and
hard to think of everything on every business. Too
so either
hard.
you got 5 businesses and none of them are working, or you have 5 businesses and they're all working, but you're so busy tending to those 5 businesses. No wonder your wife is having an affair with the pool guy because you're so busy in your business, you're not paying attention to your life partner.
Yeah.
So that's not success either. Just because you
No.
have 5 businesses and you're making money, it's not just about money. Do you have a life? Do you have a family? Do you actually get to spend time with the people you love? Do you get to build a worth, and can you do a little charity? It's nice to make money for yourself, but do you actually get to give back? And there's something amazing that when you help other people out, there's a spiritual part of life that it's nice to make money for yourself and your needs, but it's also nice to have a little overflow
It's
so you can
wonderful.
so you can help others
Yeah.
out. And there's something wonderful that just feels so good to help others.
It is. D&D Business Systems was able to send about 10 kids last summer to summer camp. And I was, at church, and one of the new kids that had been to the summer camp. Well, these aren't from church. These are kids from a Bible study group that was at the middle school. And so they got to go to church camp. And, sitting there with a child that had accepted the Lord as their Savior at church camp, and she was now singing up in front of our church, and she had brought all her family with her to hear her sing. So it's very touching. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
privilege that we get to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about a time when you failed or struggled in business and what that taught you.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier, but I ran a tech company and I made 1 million through hustle and grind, and it was nice when the money happened, but also with changes in the internet and technology, what's hot technology, yesterday is cold technology today, and it can change
Ooh,
really quick. And so I've had a pretty significant failure, and I went through depression. I did go through a time where I was having nightmares of taking my own life. I went through
ooh,
some pretty dark
wow.
stuff, and I did, one of the most challenging days of my life was walking into the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health saying, I need help because I'm depressed.
Wow.
And help is available. If you are depressed, there are doctors and medicine and counselors. There are people that are there to help you. There are programs.
Yes.
But also something else that happened was I did end up finding Jay Abraham and had this mentor that really taught me all this stuff about marketing. So in many ways, my midlife crisis turned into a midlife calling.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So what did you learn from that failure though? What did that
You failed. Congratulations. Now you're an expert at what not to do.
That's important. What better coach to have than someone that knows what not to do?
Yeah, every master was once a disaster. If somebody was going through the failure right now, I would just say, regroup, lick your wounds, go through your grieving process, and start reevaluating what's important to you and what's not, and start figuring out how you're going to get it right next time. It took me a long time to get out of the hole. One of the reasons I do the work I do is because I never want anybody to fail like I did. And if I can help somebody get it right the first time, then I've done a great service.
That's
Uh,
wonderful.
I say, 6 months with Joe will take about 30 years off your learning curve.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean, doing all that transcribing and getting all that, you can't just transcribe it from hearing it once and you're hearing it over and over and over again and all that work. Yes. Not to
yeah,
mention all those following that you continue to do with him. That's great.
yeah.
Okay, so someone's out there, they've already started a business, but they're not scaling. What's the one thing they should focus on to scale? You talked about
Well,
already about finding out what works and then repeating it, but what should they focus on?
I say this quite frequently. I take a doctor frame. It's malpractice to give a prescription without a proper diagnosis first. So I would be diagnosing what's working in your business, what's not working.
Okay.
It's different for, some people are good at lead generation, they suck at sales. Some people are great at, they suck at lead generation, but they're great at sales. So I would be looking at how are you talking about, let's pinpoint, let's be diagnostic. One of the things I'll do with people, I have this diagram and okay, are you in the right business? Green, yellow, red. How's your branding? Green, yellow, red. How's your offer? Green, yellow, red. And we can see there's some greens and there's some yellows and some reds. So we want to fix the reds and work on the yellows, and if we got greens we want to make them super green, but
Okay.
we can do a pretty quick diagnostic to see if and how, what's working, what's not working, and where does it hurt.
Okay, give me some ideas about your branding. What would you talk about with them with branding? I love branding.
Well, there's a lot of aspects to branding, and I think the
Yes.
most important thing is understanding the empathy of your ideal customer. What are their frustrations? What are their fears? What are their wants? What are their aspirations? What are they seeing in the marketplace? What are they feeling? What are they saying to themselves? Branding is about If I say the word China, the country China, okay, you have certain thoughts and feelings. That's a brand.
Right.
Okay. A brand, you can be intentional about your brand, but ultimately a brand is knowing who you are, what do you stand for, what do you stand against. One of the things you can do in your business is actually write a manifesto. Like I've written the entrepreneur, what is it, the self-reliant entrepreneur manifesto, and it's what do I stand for? And there is no leader without a tribe. There is no tribe without a leader. The highest paid person's the tribal leader. We don't follow a person, we follow a cause. What do you stand for? And what do you stand against? And your brand will attract the people that are in alignment with you, and it will hopefully repel the people that are not in alignment with you.
That's
You
true.
know,
Go ahead.
political reference, Donald Trump became the president because of not because everybody loves Donald Trump, but because of what, make America great again. There are people that say, yeah, I think, America's got some problems. Okay, I like the idea of making America better. And so people didn't vote for Trump, they voted for the brand of what he stands for. It worked very well for him. Now the question is, what do you stand for? How do
Well,
you build a brand so that you can attract people that Deanna with DND Business System stands for something. I like what she stands for. I'm in alignment with that, and it makes me want to do business with Deanna.
yeah.
So,
And so, and you mentioned in there, which is something that I've learned just recently in the last 3 weeks, you learn, to know what you hate as well. So, we think as, in our businesses that we're supposed to, love everything, love everybody, but in fact, we have to have something we stand against, something we actually hate. I hate. That's a strong word, but I really get frustrated at there are companies out there that offer to, build people's brand and their businesses, and they're like really like cheap. Like they charge like $150 a month or $97 a month. But what they don't tell the clients is once they're building their brand and everything that they send to them and everything that they develop on those websites, they hold it hostage. They'll get their own domain, which is their business name, then they'll hold it hostage. And then like if you left them, you can use nothing that has ever been developed or anything that they produced. So that kind of angers me. I like producing something that my client owns and it's always theirs. I don't hold it hostage and hijack it or anything like that.
Deanna, it's the top of the hour, and I do have another appointment.
I'm
So, can we
sorry.
wrap?
Okay, so how does somebody become a part of your group, your tribe?
Well, I think if you go to joenacasio.com, my name, joenacasio.com, or
Okay.
employeeescapeplan.com, grab a spot on my calendar and let's have that conversation to determine if or how I can help you.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, well, Joe, thank you for being here. And to everyone else, if this episode resonated with you or you realized that you don't just need more hustle, you need a better business foundation, I want you to take the next step. Go check out the resources and the links in the show notes and get a hold of Joe. And it's wonderful being here, and I'll see you next time on The Builder's Edge.